You're so gloomy, we don't need you.
My boss, a woman who knew nothing and didn't care to learn, belittled me. I sighed at her smirking face. Well, then I quit. I said so and left the company. Months later, I ran into that terrible woman again.
Did you ever find a company that would pick up a useless person like you?
Her face was mocking me. Yes, incidentally, your major client. She was dumbfounded by my words. But as she understood, her face turned pale. My name is John Smith. I'm a salesman in a food and beverage company, over 40 years old. Sales, but in a way, it's unusual. I am in sales, but I don't do outside visits. I just work on the computer at a desk by the window.
Good morning, John.
Good morning, David.
John, we're going out for drinks after work today. Would you like to join us?
Thank you for the invite. I'm sorry, I have other plans.
Got it.
I didn't communicate much with other employees and spent most of my time facing the computer. Everyone else was younger. That's partly why I didn't fit in with their conversations.
John always dresses so neatly.
Right. His clothes are always ironed perfectly, and his shirts are crisp.
And he smells good too.
It's not perfume, maybe it's fabric softener?
I wonder what fabric softener he uses.
I've caught them glancing my way and chatting a few times, but never asked what they were talking about, just kept to my work. Time to clock out already. Good work today.
Yes, good work today.
John always leaves right on time, so we always know when it's time to go.
In a way, he's like an alarm clock for us.
I left work on time every day. Sometimes I had places to go after work, and sometimes I went straight home.
If you like, would you join our company?
Yes, thank you. I'd love to. I joined this company about 3 years ago. Previously, I was at a different beverage company, but I was approached and joined this one. Originally, I never stayed long at one company, moving through various beverage-related firms.
John, how have things been since then?
Fine, no major issues. All is going smoothly for now.
That's good to hear. We have high hopes for your work.
Thank you. It was a company executive who had approached me. He had heard about me and reached out. It seems this company often reaches out externally as well.
Well, John, do you have a moment?
Sure, I'm available.
I wanted to ask you about sales strategies.
If it's something I know, I'll send you the information you need.
Thank you.
I'll email you later. I'd like to learn more about Company D and some other things.
Yes, understood.
John, you're as usual.
Yeah, well. Thomas approached me as the younger colleagues were talking to me. Thomas Miller is the only colleague of my age in sales, and a person who brought me to this company.
That's right. Thanks for the help with that matter. I'll be counting on you again.
Got it.
Also, the client wants to go out for drinks next time.
Understood. We have known each other before joining this company and can communicate with minimal conversation. As the sole senior employee, he takes care of various things. Thomas, being attentive and single, is quite popular. Let's keep up the good work for today. A peaceful sales department without any particular troubles.
Nice to meet you. I am Carol Brown, and I will be joining as the department head from today.
Then, she was transferred here. Carol came from a larger affiliated company.
It seems she comes from a bigger company than ours.
Is that so? A matter of power, maybe.
Who knows? Well, she's our boss now, so hopefully, we can work well together. I sighed internally while looking at Carol. She appeared quite flashy, wearing bright red clothes that didn't seem suitable for work. Her makeup was thick, and a strong perfume scent wafted to my desk.
Listen to what I say. I am in a higher position than you.
Her attitude was confident and assertive. Honestly, the thought of her being the boss made me worried.
Hey, who did this document?
Yes, that was me.
Redo this document, and the client you're handling will now be my responsibility.
Well, am I changing this now? And what's the issue with this document?
Figure it out yourself. Look here, it's easier to read this way.
But at our company, we usually...
Just do as I say.
She insisted on everyone in the sales department following her lead because she came from a large corporation.
She's really the worst. She's all friendly with the young men and Thomas, but she's tough on us women.
I'm just trying to avoid getting on her target.
It's tough, but let's support each other and get through this. Everyone was reluctantly obeying to avoid unnecessary trouble.
Sigh.
What's wrong?
It's about Carol, our manager.
On a rare day off, Thomas invited me for drinks. Then he let out a sigh as if he was in real trouble.
Carol has been really on my case lately. Every day she's asking me out.
I see, I get it. It seemed she often invited him out. She asked him to go out for a drink or a meal. Thomas looks young, so Carol doesn't seem to mind the age gap. He's not good with romantic relationships and has his own reasons for being single. So being pursued like this was a significant burden for him.
When I talk to female colleagues, Carol gets scolded them.
That's troublesome.
Exactly.
It appeared Thomas was also struggling with Carol's presence. Thomas sighed wearily. The upper management isn't reliable either.
Yeah, I tried consulting them once, and they were just so-so about it. It's problematic for me.
The whole atmosphere of the sales department has changed. Who knows what will happen next? Just as expected, the sales department's atmosphere changed from peaceful to tense. Everyone was trying not to get on Carol's target.
Hey, you.
Yes,
Don't just stick to your PC, go out and work.
I am working, though.
I've told you to go outside to visit your clients. Since I've been here, I haven't seen you go out even once, and yet you're always dressed up.
That's when I got targeted by Carol. She glanced at my PC, apparently not understanding what I was doing.
You're not doing any work, are you?
I am doing my job. She thought I was slacking off.
Besides, you hardly talk to anyone in the office. You always only say hello to your colleagues.
Everyone is busy. I avoided disturbing the busy sales colleagues, communicating through email and chat instead. That's how I also heard about her rumors and complaints.
Really, you're so gloomy.
Is that so?
You're in sales but glued to your PC, not going out for field work, not interacting with other staff, dressing up in mismatched clothes, and you always leave on time. Are you taking your job lightly?
Carol seemed to really dislike me, constantly picking on me and making snide remarks.
John, are you okay? Carol was giving you a hard time today, right?
I'm fine.
She's focused on you right now, so it's been easier for us. Let us know if you need anything.
We're here to help you.
Thank you, everyone. The sales staff noticed this and showed their concern. They often intervened, saying things like, "There's work to do," or "A customer is here," to pull her away. Aside from Carol, I had good relationships with others.
What's with that manager?
She complains about John leaving on time, but she leaves early too.
It's true. I saw her at a bar the other day.
Me too. She was drinking a lot.
How much does she pay for drinks?
Apparently, she was drinking with business partners, and it's being paid for with company expenses.
Well, really?
More and more, the talk about her was not about her work skills, but rather unpleasant rumors.
Are you okay?
I'm fine, and if her bothering me gives you a chance to work, then it's okay.
I'm really sorry. If something happens, I'll help out. And you know,
What's up?
you've been through a lot of job changes, haven't you? If you ever move on, could you let me know?
I've got it. With my nod, Thomas said thank you and left. Unlike me, Thomas has always been the type to stay in one place, but it seems this situation has made him think. A few months after Carol's arrival, trouble happened. Sales department expenses had increased, leading to orders for cost cutting.
Why have the expenses gone up? Now we're told to cut costs. It's ridiculous.
Carol complained, but the rise in expenses was her fault. Her excessive use of entertainment expenses was causing the increase. Everyone knew she was frequently out drinking.
I don't want to cut back on entertainment expenses. If they're cut, I won't be able to drink enough. It's your fault, John.
Why me?
You're not working. Having you here is a waste of expenses and salary. You're stealing company money.
I was being unfairly accused. I was just doing the job I was assigned. She didn't understand it, but I believed my work was important.
To cut costs, I'll start by cutting you.
What a mess.
You're so gloomy. We don't need you. Pack up your things and get out of the company.
Is that an order from the boss?
Yes, you're fired.
She said this with a smirk, and I just sighed. Then, I quit.
Don't ever come back to this office. Eliminating an incompetent employee will save us money.
Without much resistance, I packed my things and left the company.
Are you really quitting? Why so suddenly?
Carol said I was fired.
Carol? Well, if she said so, maybe there's no other way.
Even the executives couldn't stop Carol's rampage. Given her connections to a larger company, it seemed inevitable. Even the executives can't argue with her. That day, I resigned and left the company.
John, please come back to our company.
We need you here.
We'll talk to the manager.
When I checked my phone, there were numerous messages, all essentially begging me to come back. But I had been fired, and there was nothing I could do about it.
If you're not here, I don't know how to proceed with our business strategy.
A female colleague said this tearfully over the phone. I appreciate everyone's words, but I've been let go.
Don't say that.
As much as I felt for my trusting colleagues, I already had my sights set on another company. So I kept my decision and said goodbye to my colleagues. Well then.
John, are you okay?
Jess, actually, I was about to contact you. After reaching out to a certain company, I immediately got a call from Thomas. He had been out on sales visits and was unaware of the recent events.
I heard from everyone. Are you really quitting?
Jay, that's right.
Do you have the next company lined up?
Yes, fortunately.
John, we've known each other since the previous job, but I have a favor to ask.
I know. I've already talked about you, Thomas.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I got it. A few months after leaving that company. It's about time. I was at a high-end restaurant for a business meeting. Honestly, the person I was meeting today was a bit complicated for me. And as I waited at the entrance,
Wait, aren't you?
long time no see, Carol Brown appeared. Seeing me, Carol smirked.
Oh look, it's the gloomy window seat guy.
She spoke in a condescending tone, still smirking.
What are you doing here? Surely not eating, right? You couldn't possibly afford a meal here, could you?
She mocked further.
Did you ever find a company that would pick up a useless person like you?
She continued to belittle me, obviously unaware of my situation. Well, actually,
It can't be anything important, right?
I tried to explain, but Carol wouldn't listen. Continuing with her mocking laughter, she ranted on.
What would a useless non-worker like you want at such a high-end restaurant? Are you part of the cleaning staff? It's just like you, trying to look cool. It doesn't suit you at all.
I'm not part of the cleaning staff. I'm here for work today.
Work, huh? That's a word for people who actually work hard, like me. Not for incompetents like you. Today, I came here as a sales manager for a business meeting. Not like you, who just sits at a computer.
She was really talking a lot.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
As I grew tired of her endless chatter, I was approached. I've been waiting for you, Director Robert. It was Robert, the director from the major restaurant chain Bloom Dining. As I shook hands with Robert, Carol suddenly bowed her head.
Director Robert, thank you very much for your precious time today.
Seeing that it was Director Robert, Carol quickly started to butter him up, showing just how important the business meeting was to her company.
Hi, Carol. Looking forward to working together. But really, if both of you had arrived earlier, you could have waited inside.
Robert said to me with a friendly smile.
What? John is involved in this business?
Carol looked bewildered.
No way. Such a gloomy guy.
She muttered under her breath, clearly flustered.
Shall we go inside then?
Yes.
Yes, let's.
Prompted by Robert, we proceeded into the restaurant. We were then guided to a private room.
What's going on here?
You don't have to rush. You'll understand soon. I whispered back to Carol, making sure Robert didn't hear. Once inside the private room and the attendant had left, I prepared my business card. It was time to clarify the earlier question. Here is my business card.
What, really?
Carol's eyes widened as she looked at the card. It says John Murphy, head of Bloom Food Research Department. You asked earlier if there was a place that would pick me up. Well, I was picked up by your major client. I said with a smile, and Carol's face turned increasingly pale. After leaving that company, I had contacted Robert. I had been acquainted with Robert for a while and had previously received an invitation from him.
I'm glad you joined us, John.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you.
The pleasure is ours. We're grateful to have someone of your reputed talents join us. We'll be counting on you.
Yes, I will do my best for the company. Thus, I joined Bloom Dining and took on the responsibilities entrusted to me, just like at the previous company. My work was recognized, leading to a smooth promotion to my current position as the head of the department.
Is that really possible?
Is something the matter?
No, it's nothing.
Carol shook her head with a pale face. She couldn't believe that I, whom she had deemed incompetent and fired, had become the head of a department in a major corporation.
It can't be right. You were the incompetent, gloomy one.
Carol was dumbfounded.
What am I supposed to do now?
The reality that her business negotiation partner was someone she had ridiculed and treated poorly, and the fact that her company was in a weaker position, seemed to overwhelm her. It was a complete reversal of our previous situation when she had fired me. Now it was time to see her skills in business.
Well.
How are things going regarding this matter?
Well.
Carol seemed unable to deliver her usual eloquent sales pitch. Glancing at me frequently, still shocked by the earlier revelation. Eventually, she left the meeting in disarray.
Did you know Carol? She seemed quite concerned about you.
Robert asked after we saw her off. Actually, she's the one who fired me from my previous job, calling me a gloomy incompetent.
Really?
I then shared the whole story of my previous job with Robert.
What a rude person she is.
Robert was indignant, as if it was a personal affront.
Regarding this deal, I don't want to deal with such a disrespectful person in the future. Let's get someone else to handle it.
Yes, let's proceed with the negotiations once the representative is changed.
All right. I'll make sure to communicate that.
Robert and I decided to request a change of representative from the previous company. Given our company's stronger position, it was likely that Carol would face some repercussions.
John, you've got to hear this.
Later on, a former colleague filled me in about Carol. At her company, the executives confronted her, saying, "What do you mean by changing the person in charge as a manager?" It turns out the sales staff, who had been enduring her tyranny, reported her past misdeeds to the executives, including the incident where she fired me. They told her, "We have refrained from reprimanding you because you're on secondment from an affiliate company, but this time, we will have to report back to your parent company."
The look on Carol's face was ashen.
Is that so? Thanks for letting me know.
Not at all. I owe you, John.
The former colleague was smiling, relieved at the turn of events. Some time later, I got a call from the executives of my former company.
John, would you consider coming back to us?
They were reconsidering my employment. Apparently, the work I did in the sales department was reevaluated. After I left, there was a noticeable decline in the department's performance, prompting an investigation. I had been researching long-term business strategies for clients, staying up to date with recent trends, and explaining these in a comprehensible manner to the sales team. I also advised on sales strategies, which was why I was always at my PC. Besides, I was checking the financial status of every single one of our business partners. And I controlled the accounts receivable to make sure they didn't become bad debts. After hours, I would meet with representatives from current and potential clients to gather information over drinks. I was uncovering hidden needs in other companies and providing feedback to the sales team. That's what I dressed well after work, and it made transitioning to major corporations easier.
You really did significant work. You're an elite being headhunted from everywhere, aren't you?
Not really, but I do get to see various companies, thanks to that.
How about this? We can offer you more than double your previous salary.
double my previous salary would be a substantial amount. But I'm sorry, I can't trust a company that tolerated her behavior to such an extent, and I'm happy with my current job. With that, I ignored their plea to reconsider and declined the offer to return.
I heard about our manager came for a negotiation.
For us, Robert is our director now.
Oh, my apologies.
Thomas was the first to approach me with this news. When I was fired, Thomas decided to switch to Bloom Dining and joined the sales team after me. He had been with the previous company for many years but had enough of dealing with Carol. He thought about moving to another company like I did if it meant the company's image was preserved over justice. Then I got fired, and that became the trigger for him to join Bloom Dining. Interestingly, Robert, upon hearing from me, was ready to hire Thomas on the spot, but the earnest Thomas went through a formal interview to join our team. Originally a talented salesman, Thomas now excels at Bloom Dining too.
John, please listen.
Well, calm down, Zoe. A female employee from my former department contacted me. The one who cried when she learned I had left. She still seems to admire me.
I've been assigned the research tasks you used to handle. Can you teach me?
Really? Taking over the tasks of a company I left is?
Please. I really want to improve our sales.
Despite my hesitation, I was moved by Zoe's earnestness and decided to teach her. So, this is how.
I see, so that's how it works.
Our relationship resembled that of a teacher and student due to our age difference.
We're really like teacher and student.
Yes, it would be something like this if I had a student.
Thank you, Professor.
Teach me too, Professor.
Please don't call me it, Luke. When we met occasionally for lessons, another former colleague, Luke, wanted to join, eager to learn my sales techniques. I thought, with these two guys, that company will be okay. I was relieved to see them positively trying to learn, just like I did in the past. They could form a great team, reminiscent of Thomas and me in the past. Carol ended up returning to her original company as a regular employee. However, her lavish lifestyle and fondness for drinking couldn't be sustained on her regular salary, leading her to secretly work at nightclubs. Yet, moonlighting was prohibited by her company. And once discovered, she was fired. Now, struggling to attract clients due to her haughty nature, she isn't earning much, a sort of poetic justice. In a way, it's cause and effect.
I saw her looking ragged in the downtown recently.
Well, she caused a lot of trouble for others, so now it's her turn to struggle.
That's right.
Carol, who had fired me, now faced her own set of hardships. She would not have thought of it then. She once contacted me, using the business card I had given her.
Well, could you hire me at Bloom Dining?
That's impossible.
Well, at least contact Thomas.
She contacted me too many times and was noisy, so I pushed her response to Thomas. I'm sorry, but I'm not even interested in people like you, and clearly I hate you. Please don't contact me or my benefactor in the future. To be honest, I don't want to hear your voice again. Thomas clearly refused. She apparently tried to contact Thomas after that, but Thomas himself contacted his lawyer. She was placed on a restraining order so she could no longer approach him. Being popular can be troublesome.
I never wanted this popularity.
Thomas and I had worked together at one of the companies during my job hopping days. He had been engaged, but remained single after his fiancée died in a car accident. Since then, he understood the nature of my work and began relying on me. Now, he's thriving as a skilled senior in sales. Meanwhile, I'm grateful to be able to utilize my skills at Bloom Dining, conducting research with a more generous budget than before at my previous company. Thanks to my efforts, Bloom Dining's default rate dramatically decreased, and we were able to grasp our clients' needs in more detail, leading to increased contract rates.
It was definitely the right decision to headhunt you. You made a significant difference.
I'm glad to be of service to the company.
Everyone praised you. They said contracts became much easier to secure because you identified the needs so precisely.
That's good to hear. I just did what I could.
I'm really glad you joined our company.
Meanwhile, back at my former company, I heard that Zoe had taken over my research tasks and was doing splendidly, as Luke informed me.
Her research skills are second only to yours, John.
Is that so? She did absorb everything quickly when I taught her.
I can't be outdone by her.
Luke chuckled, seemingly energized by the competition. It appears that they have become good motivators for each other, and research efforts helped stabilize the sales department.
Zoe is a disciple of John's. Her methods are just like yours.
And you, Thomas, you've been teaching Luke, right?
That's true.
While I was teaching Zoe, Thomas also provided advice to Luke whenever possible. Looks like it's time for a generational shift, huh?
Maybe, but since we're at different companies, we'll remain rivals for a while longer.
Indeed, can't afford to lose. Flashy jobs are easily recognized from the outside, but the unseen, supportive roles are vital for an organization's growth. While some in sales secure numerous contracts, it's the administrative staff behind the scenes providing support. Cleaners keep the office and common areas tidy, contributing to the overall function. An organization can grow because it has employees fulfilling various roles. It's often unclear who is doing what and how they contribute to the work. However, it's important to approach each role without prejudice and strive to understand the contribution of each member. Especially those in leadership positions should never forget this.
I've poached a young, highly educated person, so you're no longer needed.
A new department director who told me and laughed at me. I've worked hard for this company for 10 years. Am I being fired because I don't have a high degree?
Understood. If he's getting fired, I'll take him under my wing.
When I was in the midst of my disappointment, my business partner told me so. And then she took me to the place and someone showed up.
Long time no see, naughty boy.
I'm Kenny. I was a high school graduate and worked for a company. The reason I chose to be a high school graduate was related to a certain person.
Kenny is kinda cocky.
What did you say?
Yay, it's just not fun with Kenny around.
Back in high school, I had some trouble in my club activities, which made it hard to attend school for a while. Moreover, at that time, I didn't have anything I wanted to become. So I didn't have a university I wanted to attend, and I often argued with my parents about it.
You're our child. You should aim for a prestigious university.
What's the point of going to a prestigious university?
Just do as I say.
Living like that, I got fed up with everything. Feeling out of place both at school and home, I went to the school's rooftop to blow off some steam. What?
Who could that be?
There was already someone there.
Can't you Kenny, the troublemaker?
The person already there was the English teacher, Mrs. Nancy Smith. She looked surprised for a moment at my appearance, but then burst into laughter. I was taken aback by her presence, but her smile made me relax.
You haven't submitted your career preferences, got into trouble in the club activities, and now you're on the off-limits rooftop.
You're on the off-limits rooftop as well, aren't you?
I'm allowed because I'm a teacher. Besides, I wanted to see the sky. The staff room feels suffocating.
I retorted to the teacher, and that was her response. Then, we had some light-hearted conversation. Suggestions for the next lesson, stuff about club activities, talks that had nothing to do with me, and gradually, I felt more at ease.
By the way, what do you want to do in the future?
At that question from her, I couldn't answer anything. What is my dream for the future? I'm struggling because I don't know.
I think I'd be better in sales or something rather than teaching.
Leaving me aside, Mrs. Smith started talking.
Look, if you don't have something you want to do, why not just get a job or start a business? You don't seem like someone who'd work well under others. You'd be suited for entrepreneurship.
What a reckless thing to say. Yet, it was enough to clear the cloudiness in my heart. My parents tell me to study and become a public officer, and my homeroom teacher says I'll end up a foolish adult if I don't go to university. But I could take Mrs. Smith's words to heart more than theirs.
Right, I might quit teaching and start a business. Let's see who can earn more in the future.
That was Mrs. Smith's suggestion. Even though I thought it was foolish, my heart felt the clearest it ever had. Starting a business, huh? Even after returning home, I kept pondering Mrs. Smith's words. It's not that I don't want to study. However, I can think of a reason why I must continue studying. I felt more suited to having a rival and striving together, as Mrs. Smith suggested, rather than studying aimlessly. If I tell it as it is, my parents would surely oppose it. My parents won't understand me. Therefore, I didn't tell my parents and instead wrote employment on the school's career preference survey. And to be prepared for any probing from my homeroom teacher or parents, I decided to look for companies that hire high school graduates.
Why not start a business?
Mrs. Smith made it sound trivial, but I thought I should first experience society. My homeroom teacher reacted just as I expected upon seeing my survey.
There's a limit to what companies will hire a high school graduate.
But that's my preference. The homeroom teacher clearly looked down on me. Then, the homeroom teacher called my parents to the school.
What are you thinking? You shameless fool.
I can't believe you are this foolish.
I thought you were a troublemaker, but I didn't realize you were so thoughtless.
I was subjected to what could be taken as verbal abuse from my parents and my homeroom teacher, but out of defiance, I vowed to work and succeed just to prove them wrong. It's my life. I'll do what I want. In the end, I didn't back down and got a job right after graduating high school. Then, I moved out and started living on my own. After that, I never saw my parents again, nor did I feel the desire to. I feel kind of liberated. I didn't feel lonely at all.
You really took that step. Maybe I should too.
Mrs. Smith said that to me when I was graduating. After that, I worked desperately. Even though it was my choice, I felt somewhat inferior for only having a high school diploma. In an era where a university degree is the norm, being a high school graduate was something that attracted attention, for better or worse. Why didn't you go to university or vocational school? My colleague would ask me that. In response, I always gave vague answers. People around me speculated. He must come from a poor family that needed him to work immediately, and they sympathized with me based on their assumptions. I dislike being pitied or favored by those around me. Let's just focus on the work. If I could produce results at work, I believe that others would recognize me as a competent individual. With that thought, I decided to give my all. Before I knew it, 10 years had passed since I joined the company. Now, hardly any employees look at me with pity.
Kenny, you're always working hard, I see.
You're really reliable.
Thank you. From my early days, working hard and taking the initiative in tasks gained me support from my colleagues. My 10 years of diligent work were recognized not only within the company, but also by our business partners.
It was right to trust Kenny. Working with you is reassuring.
I received praise as well.
Kenny is quick and thorough with his work. It's a pleasure to work with him.
Especially Jessica, the sales manager from a partner company, praised me a lot. She seemed much more mature than me, but I couldn't quite believe the rumors that she was the same age as me. I'm honored to hear you say so much.
Kenny, you're really hardworking. I'd like you to come work for our company.
She shared my interest in anime, which made us get along well, and we even went out for drinks privately. While drinking, we talked about our favorite things. I liked those moments, but it wasn't all good.
Don't get too cocky, you high school grad loser.
I would like to think that the 10 years had finally paid off, but there was one concerning person among the employees. It's the new director, James. The director is an academicist who has his own value system. The more educated, the better, and the less educated, the incompetent. From James' point of view, I was a piece of trash.
Hey, useless one.
He would call me that, never by my name.
Go buy coffee for me. Even someone as useless as you can manage that.
Moreover, James would order me to do menial tasks, not even acknowledging me. Even when others from different companies praised me, he would say,
"Did you offer them to sleep your way to the top? You must be tough being incompetent. You go to lengths."
In front of other employees, he hurled such terrible slander at me. I have pride in my 10 years of service. However, as he pointed out, I didn't have a higher education. James, please judge me based on my current performance.
The fact that you're undereducated is the truth. If you want me to acknowledge that, at least go to university.
Even when I expressed my thoughts, Being talked down to about my educational background left me without a retort. As a result, I could only keep my frustration to myself, sighing in dismay. One day, Jessica came to our company for a business meeting. "Sorry, it seems I forgot some documents. I'll fetch them right away."
It's okay. No rush. Take your time.
I thanked Jessica, who smiled and forgave me as I hurried back to my desk for the documents. As I was about to return to her, "I need to hurry."
Whoa.
In my haste, I didn't notice James drinking coffee around the corner and accidentally bumped into him. "I'm so sorry." I had to return to Jessica, so I quickly apologized and ran off.
That bastard.
I didn't realize until the end that James was glaring at me with anger. After the meeting, Jessica and I were chatting as we walked her to the entrance of the company.
Hey, incompetent.
Then, from behind, James called out to me. "James."
What was your attitude earlier?
"I'm very sorry about earlier. I was in a hurry because of the meeting." I quickly sensed what he wanted to say and apologized to him. However, he seemed angry about how I acted when I bumped him and couldn't contain his anger.
I don't like it when someone thinks a mere sorry is enough after bumping into their boss. I don't need employees who can't respect their superiors, meeting or not. It's wrong for someone with your low education to act so high and mighty.
In front of Jessica, James was yelling at me. When I glanced at Jessica, she was frowning and looking at James.
You're fired. I've tolerated you until now, but I can't stand it anymore. Pack your things and get out.
Wait a minute. I've been working here for a long time, and to be fired just because I bumped into you once. I objected to his abrupt dismissal, not caring how Jessica looked at me. But that only made him angrier.
Just because you bumped into me once. Are you mocking me with your low education? That's why you're losing your job. I've already poached someone with higher education, so you're unnecessary.
This can't be. We argued for a while, but he had the upper hand in terms of power. As I became increasingly disheartened, James smiled smugly.
I've poached a young, highly educated person, so you're no longer needed.
Hearing this again made me slump in defeat. Were my 10 years all for nothing? That's when I thought so.
Excuse me for a moment.
Jessica, who had been quietly listening to our conversation, interjected. At that, James looked puzzled.
Please stay out of this. You're an outsider.
So, you're firing him because his attitude towards you wasn't good, even though he's been with this company for 10 years and has an excellent work record? Is that the kind of company this is?
Ignoring James's words, Jessica pressed on. I could only watch in silence.
You are the sales manager of another company, so please don't try to interfere with us like a big shot.
Understood. If he's going to be fired, I will take him in.
What did you just say? Surprised, I looked at Jessica, and James looked even more shocked.
Is it up to you to decide that?
Then, please pack your things quickly and come to our company.
Ignoring the flustered James, she urged me on. Compelled by her, I headed to my desk to pack my belongings.
Please consider all the business deals you were advancing as null. Once he joins us, everything will be resolved. I will inform your president of this, including what happened here.
Hearing that the deals would be canceled and that the president would be informed, James turned pale.
Wait, hold on. All right, your firing is canceled.
Ignoring him, Jessica firmly pushed me forward. After discussions, including with our president, it was decided that I would join Jessica's company, pulled away from the one I had served for 10 years. James's actions led to the loss of significant business and faced tremendous repercussions from the executives.
You could probably get a good settlement if you had evidence.
That's all right, thank you, I said with a wry smile to Jessica's words. I had endured terrible treatment from him, but just being freed from it was enough for me.
If Kenny joins our company, James is going to be in big trouble anyway.
What do you mean by that?
Don't worry about it. You'll find out soon enough.
While I was packing, my colleagues approached me. They apologized for not being able to cover for me and gave me encouragement to do my best in the next company. I thanked them and changed jobs. Jessica, I would like to thank the president. Later, I told Jessica that I wanted to thank the president. In fact, right after being recruited, I had asked her, "Is it okay without the president's approval?"
It's fine, don't worry.
Jessica reassured me in response to my question. I expressed my desire to meet the president.
That's when the president has time.
Jessica replied to me. So, she took care of all the paperwork and formalities. I really want to meet the president soon.
All right.
She finally seemed willing to arrange the meeting. With a slightly absent-minded smile, Jessica led me to the president's office. There, the president was waiting.
It's been a while, hasn't it, naughty boy? You've grown up quite a bit.
The person greeted me with a grin, a voice and manner I felt I recognized.
This is President Nancy Smith.
Jessica introduced her. In that moment, a flood of distant memories came back to me. During high school, amid career concerns and discord with my parents,
why not start a business?
She was the teacher who casually suggested. Thanks to those simple conversations on the rooftop, I was able to take my first step into society. She was my benefactor, the one who shaped who I am today. And there she was, Mrs. Smith, right in front of me. Mrs. Smith, why are you here?
Oh, it's nothing much. I told you at the graduation ceremony, didn't I, that I needed to take a step forward too.
Mrs. Smith answered my question with a laugh.
After you graduated, I quit teaching and started this company. I always knew I wanted to do something, but when I saw you take the first step, I knew I had to step up too, even though I'm older.
She explained that to me, and then pointed to Jessica, saying,
She's my daughter, same age as you. She opposed me more than anyone when I first mentioned starting a business. It's quite sad to be so negatively received by your own family.
Of course, she quit her job the moment I graduated from high school. And Dad was like, if Nancy thought it through, it's going to be all right. So nonchalant.
The two started arguing in front of me. A typical parent-child squabble, different from the composed Mrs. Smith or the manager Jessica I knew. Watching this scene made me smile. They looked at me. Their expressions seemed somewhat embarrassed. You really took that step you talked about back then, and thank you for saving me. I thanked Mrs. Smith.
You actually went out into society and served well for 10 years. The reason we continued business with that company was because of you. It was only natural for me to employ you if they were going to let you go.
Just as my mother told me, you worked hard and dedicated yourself fully. That's why the business continued. It wasn't because I had a special view of you.
Mrs. Smith and Jessica both kindly assured me my 10 years at that company were not in vain. I had never worked hard just for praise, but I was deeply grateful that there were people who saw and helped me.
Your behavior saved you,
Mrs. Smith said, bringing tears to my eyes. Since then, I've been working hard to contribute to the company of Mrs. Smith and Jessica, who saved me. Later, when I visited my client, they said,
I wanted to sign the contract because Kenny was in charge. That's why I want to sign with Nancy's company now.
We ended up getting new contract under better terms than my previous company. Thanks to this, our company's performance has been on the rise. While my former company has been declining, the high-educated individual James had poached turned out to be incompetent, often upsetting clients and causing trouble for James, as I was informed by a former colleague.
They're talking about demoting him soon to take responsibility.
The former colleague, who is also planning to change jobs soon. The situation had escalated to this point largely because the president had neglected James's actions. James was the president's favorite, and the president at that time was under his thumb.
Why do you think he was in such a place during working hours on the day that led to Kenny's job change?
When I was asked that question, I remembered that, while everyone was at their desks or out for business, James was drinking coffee in a discreet spot.
He was shirking his duties onto those with less education and slacking off.
So that's why he was there. It turns out, James often slacked off there, not just on that day. I happened to pass by in a hurry and bumped into him.
The president overlooked this too. Everyone's preparing to leave because they don't want to be in such a place anymore.
It seems that the competent executives are going independent, and many employees plan to follow them. I didn't expect things to escalate this much, but it turned out for the better. I expressed my encouragement to the former colleague and said goodbye. Years have passed since I joined Nancy's company. Jessica and I had become a couple.
Well, it's natural for young people who are together to end up this way,
Nancy said, smiling happily at us. Working under my benefactor and having a special someone, I felt the happiest I've ever been.
We need to say hello to your parents,
Jessica mentioned, causing mixed feelings in me. I haven't been in touch with my parents since graduating from high school. I was cut off from my parents. To think of introducing someone I'm dating with the intention of marrying to such parents seemed impossible. My parents,
If you're going to meet his parents, maybe I should come along. Yes, that's best. Besides, I was the one who saved him. There might be some thanks in it for me.
Initially reluctant to introduce her daughter to my parents, Nancy began to set up a meeting casually. Seeing this, I reluctantly informed my parents about the meetup. Time passed, and when the scheduled hour arrived, my parents showed up at the designated place. It's been a while. I saw my parents for the first time in a long time and got a little excited. It's been more than 10 years since I left home after falling out with my parents. I did have nostalgic memories. Smiling, I greeted them, and my parents responded,
You haven't changed much, have you?
Right, you haven't changed.
they said without looking me in the eyes. At that moment, I didn't think anything was amiss.
Thank you so much for taking care of our foolish son.
My parents said to Nancy and Jessica. I felt a bit uncomfortable with the term foolish son, but thought it might just be their way of speaking modestly, and I led everyone into the restaurant Nancy had arranged. The dinner was going smoothly, and everyone had started to drink.
It's such an honor to have your distinguished daughter choose our son. He left home without listening to anything we said. We thought he might end up nowhere.
My mother began to say. Then my father continued.
This guy, not going to university after high school and just getting a job, did something only a fool would think of. I suppose his salary is still low. He must be starting to realize I was right. That's why he contacted us.
They started belittling my career like that. I wanted to stop them, but couldn't find the words. Jessica, despite the earlier conversation, was just giving a forced smile.
He's desperately living his life in his own incompetent way. I don't know what company he joined, but I'm sure it's not a great one, since they hire people like him.
In the next moment, Nancy splashed water on my parents. My parents were taken aback, and Jessica and I were too stunned to react quickly.
I've reached my limit of patience. Listening to you two speak makes my meal taste bad. It's astonishing how much you can badmouth your own son. In a way, I'm impressed. You have no right to ridicule his initiative.
Nancy spat out. At that, my parents' faces turned red with anger.
Who do you think you are?
Just the president of the not-so-great company that took in your supposedly good-for-nothing son. Please, take note.
Nancy said this to my angry parents, put down her business card, and looked at us.
Let's go have another drink.
She then led us out of the restaurant.
I did something too much earlier, so I'll pay here.
And we went into Nancy's favorite pub and had to drink again. Checking my phone briefly, I saw messages from my parents.
What's the meaning of this? Explain us.
My father had sent me a message. Nancy spoke the truth. I replied before turning off my phone.
I'm sorry, Kenny.
No, don't worry about it. I had forgotten. My parents never really saw me. Ever since, my parents had insisted they were right, which led them to pressure me about my education.
Kenny, I like you just the way you are now.
I know. I truly believe I did the right thing by not following their path. Meeting with my parents might have been a good thing after all. It reminded me of the value of having people who understand me.
I thought perhaps it could deepen the family bond, but with such parents, it's better to stay away.
Nancy remarked when we got back to the company. Her words made me realize that I had shared the details with Jessica but not with Nancy. Given her free-spirited nature as a former teacher, she probably never inquired about my family situation. I think so too. If I had stayed with those parents, I would have ended up like James. I would have become someone who easily disrespects others. I was somewhat fortunate to have distanced myself from such parents early on. By the way, was there a reason you left your business card?
Oh, that was so if you ever want to reconcile with your family, or if they reach out, they'd know the company name, and it would be easier to contact.
That remark made me think of my parents' faces when they belittled me. It was awful. Later, when I turned my phone back on, the messages had turned into insults like disgrace to the family and you're just a fool. Seeing that, I honestly couldn't imagine a day when we could reconcile.
It might be like that now. I certainly don't want to get close to your parents either.
Nancy also had a bad impression of my parents.
But having the willingness to make amends is necessary to survive in society.
I thought about that and agreed. Just because we don't get along or dislike each other doesn't mean we can avoid interaction.
But that doesn't mean you should sacrifice your well-being.
What do you mean?
If you had stayed with your parents, you might have broken down eventually. That's why the decision you made back then was wise.
Nancy said with a gentle smile. I smiled back at her. Yes, I am who I am today because of that decision. Hopefully, we can understand each other someday.
I hope for that too.
Nancy agreed. I nodded, trying not to let the tears fall. Some time later, Jessica and I got married. We didn't invite my parents to the wedding. They would probably get drunk at the ceremony and ruin it by belittling me. I have them blocked on my contacts for now. Maybe someday, if we can reconcile, we might be able to have a relationship as a family. When that time comes, I'll have them say I'm a proud son.
That's right.
Jessica said, laughing as I stroked her belly. Now she has our child in her belly. We plan to give our child a future full of freedom, just like Nancy and me. I want our child to try various things, but sometimes someone needs to be there to say stop.
That'll be my role.
Jessica said so with a laugh, and I felt incredibly happy during this moment. There are people in the world who just can't understand each other. People like me and Nancy prefer to move freely without being confined by conventions. Others, like James and my parents, stick to conventional norms. The important thing is to care for others and not to deny their faults. Making an effort to understand each other is necessary for living in society. However, it's counterproductive if trying too hard breaks one's spirit. If understanding each other is impossible, keeping a distance is also necessary for survival. This experience has made me acutely aware of that. In fact, being away has allowed me to live these peaceful and happy days.
I wonder what paths our child will choose.
With our kid being their grandchild, it's unpredictable. We've got a baby boy. We will let him choose his path. I'll give him as much love and support as I didn't get. Jessica and I have made that promise.
By the way, my mom said she's coming to see her grandchild.
Is that so? Then we'll have to give her a grand welcome. I have a precious family that understands me. Thanks to their presence, I keep smiling from the bottom of my heart today.
At the front door, I handed an envelope to my mill, saying it was some spending money. She refused, saying she didn't need money, but I insisted, telling her to buy something for the kids. The letter enclosed expressed my gratitude for her care over the years and my apology for not being able to protect the family. That was the last time I saw my mill and my wife.
We never really had good chemistry, did we? You've also had a hard time living with your in-laws. It must have been suffocating for you as a man. However, I do appreciate you giving my parents peace of mind.
My wife said that in a calm tone. I couldn't feel any gratitude or consolation in her words or expression. I am Michael Carter, 48 years old. I'm a manager at a pharmaceutical company. My only daughter, Emily, is a college student studying abroad in France. So it was just my wife and I living together. Her words went on.
Do we really need to keep trying? Life's entering its second half. It's okay to let go of things we've done reluctantly and live out the dreams we couldn't achieve before. Life is once, after all. So I'm not going to Vietnam. An overseas transfer to a developing country. You must be joking. At your age, a 5-year stint in Vietnam sounds like a demotion, doesn't it? It's embarrassing, really. I'm fed up with our current life, and you want me to live even more inconveniently? The fact that you have to follow personnel decisions doesn't change, whether I'm here or not. You should go alone and fulfill your employee duties, but I can't. Just because I'm your wife doesn't mean I have to blindly follow your demotion, right?
With that, she left the room. She probably wants to enjoy the rest of her life as she pleases. Honestly, I saw this coming. But knowing it didn't stop the words from hurting. I couldn't help but feel the pain of a bad premonition turning into reality. I married Linda 23 years ago. We went to different universities but met in a common club. Linda was proactive, cheerful, and stood out. We never met alone during college, but she reached out after I started working, and we began dating. I think she liked where I got a job. It's a well-known, top-tier company with a long history in the pharmaceutical industry. In addition to pharmaceuticals, it also deals with health foods and cosmetics. The company is expanding sales in populous Southeast Asia, developing skincare products suited to the climate, and is now preparing for local sales. We have been selling pharmaceuticals in Vietnam and the Philippines for a while, and sending employees there is not a new strategy. It's about exploring new markets and training local staff, not a demotion. However, Linda, who prefers a luxurious lifestyle, probably hoped for Europe. During our 23-year marriage, we've been abroad 3 times. Our honeymoon was in Hawaii, and the other 2 trips were to France and Italy. All of them were her choices. Linda also went on women-only trips with her college friends. They always went to Europe. She bought luxury goods at duty-free shops abroad and brought back cosmetics for me and our daughter.
Men should wear cologne, too.
I was pressured into using scents I didn't like. When Linda was away, her mother, Sarah, would come over to cook. Originally, this house was built in Linda's parents' backyard as a home for the newlyweds. Linda's travels were not only abroad but sometimes on weekends, so Sarah often took care of things in her absence. Her cooking might not be fancy, but it's the epitome of American home cooking, and both my daughter, Emily, and I always enjoyed it. It tasted better than Linda's cooking, and I could feel her genuine desire to serve delicious food. On the other hand, Linda dislikes cooking. Knowing this, Sarah frequently brings over dishes. While we live separately, part of me thinks living with she would be easier, considering her efforts. But my wife dislikes that idea. She can't stand her mother's nagging. To me, her complaints seem justified, but to Linda, they're nothing but annoying scoldings. What Linda really wants is not a caring mother, but a housekeeper who silently manages all the household chores. Between the times we finish Sarah's dishes and wait for the next, my wife's cooking makes an appearance as a stopgap. Curry rice, stew, pasta, or Chinese food. In winter, she cooks French onion soup. On those days, the trash bin tells a different story. It overflows with pre-cut vegetables for curry, pasta sauce, ingredients for soup, all in their packaging. My wife never bothered to align trash disposal with the pickup schedule. I try to understand, given my own busy weekdays. But Linda is a homemaker. She has never worked a day in her life. Engrossed in her hobbies like theater and tennis since her younger days, she neglects the housework. Every time, Sarah ends up tidying up the house. I believe she carried our daughter, Emily, on her back much more often than Linda did. My Phil once suggested having another child. He wants a grandson.
No more kids. Pregnancy and raising one was enough.
Linda would frown and say that each time. I've told her not to say such things in front of Emily. What child would be happy to see their mother visibly fed up with parenting? Emily wasn't a gloomy child, perhaps taking after her mother's lively nature, but she seemed somewhat indifferent towards people. Whether that's her true character or the result of her mother's indifferent parenting, I can't tell. But if we were to have only one child, I wish she'd engage more deeply with her. Seeing my wife plan her schedule as soon as my business trips were confirmed made me wonder what our marriage was all about. Even though both are mothers to an only daughter, my wife and Mill are worlds apart. I'm the middle child of 3 siblings, with an older brother and a younger sister. In the countryside, expectations for the eldest son were high, and my brother was cherished, while I, 2 years younger, wore his hand-me-downs. My sister, being the youngest, must have been especially adored. I might have felt excluded, even if our parents didn't realize it. That's why I thought when I got married, I would love our children with all my heart. I always wanted to create a home where the family could feel happiness at all times. I worked hard to ensure we had no financial worries and helped with household chores and child rearing as much as I could. But living with a wife who didn't prioritize home life only increased my burdens. Maybe for Linda, marriage and childbirth were just things she thought she'd try once. My Phil passed away around the time Emily started elementary school. As my Mill no longer needed to care for her husband, Linda relied on her mother even more than before, making her even freer. It was my daughter, rather than my wife, who was worried about my trip to Vietnam. Emily, my daughter, spent a month in Paris on a homestay during her first year of high school. It sparked her interest in France, and so she transferred to a university in France starting from her junior year of college. She often sends pictures and updates from there via WhatsApp and writes detailed messages about the struggles of living abroad. Mark, don't tell Mom. The only things I'm grateful for in my marriage to Linda are the love from my in-laws and having my daughter. By this time, Linda was probably as tired of married life as a child gets tired of playing house. On the morning of my departure, I carried my packed suitcase downstairs alone. I left the signed divorce papers on the bedroom sideboard. A sticky note was attached to it beforehand, and it read, "Please sign this before you go." She planned to tell Emily and Sarah after I had left. I didn't want to cause a stir before leaving, so I complied.
Why leave now, when there's really no need to go out at a time like this?
Linda had been away on a trip with her classmates since the day before. She claimed she couldn't cancel the reservation made well in advance because it would be unfair to her friends. I no longer cared about such things. Sarah, waiting to see me off at the front door, seemed even smaller. Please take good care of Linda and look after your health.
Take care of yourself too. Drink enough water and watch your meals.
Please stay healthy. I'll rely on you when Emily comes back.
Take care.
I thanked her sincerely and got into the waiting taxi. I gave Sarah an envelope of money, calling it pocket money. She refused to accept it, but I insisted she use it to buy something Emily likes. The envelope also contained a letter of thanks for her care over the years and an apology for not being able to keep the family together. I think Emily had a hunch about it. Seeing Emily always looking outside, away from home, made me wonder if that's why she left, to avoid facing her anxieties. That was the last time I saw Sarah and Linda. I had no enthusiasm left to start a new life in a foreign country. Leaving my homeland behind, I felt no nostalgia, only the heavy pain of a broken home as I left JFK. Time passed, and I returned to the U.S. Heading to one of the top hotels in New York, the area was bustling due to the weekend. That day, a Thanksgiving party was being held to celebrate the 100th anniversary of my company. It was a buffet party for employees and their families. I went with Lynn. She is my new wife, whom I met during my 5 years living in Vietnam. I was drawn to her unobtrusive yet attentive demeanor. After 2 years of dating, we decided to marry, knowing we would return to USA. She learned English in preparation for our life here. Many in Vietnam speak French due to colonial history. Lynn, inheriting her grandfather's accent, relearned and taught French at a language school. There, she interacted with American teachers and students, which was how we met. She seems to have a knack for languages. She's even better at French than me. That day, she wore a traditional Vietnamese áo dai, a slim-fitting dress. Perhaps because the slim-fitting traditional attire wouldn't suit otherwise, it seemed that overweight women were rarely seen in Vietnam. Although she isn't very tall, Lynn looks slender and elegant, her hair tied up with decorative hairpins and earrings that enhanced her appearance. After descending from the elevator, we walked into the venue together. Her áo dai was a deep wine color with large flower embroidery. It was not flashy, but elegant, making me feel proud. Life in Vietnam turned out to be more comfortable than I expected. The climate suited me as I disliked it cold, and our apartment was a serviced residence. It was fully furnished and included thrice weekly cleaning and laundry services. We could watch American TV shows and had access to a pool and gym. Living without household chores in a slightly better environment made me think Linda would have liked it had she come. Many Americans lived in my apartment complex. As I began learning Vietnamese, not only did I become acquainted with more American people, but I also started to increase my circle of Vietnamese acquaintances, 1 or 2 at a time. Everyone was kind and friendly, with no airs about them. Surprisingly, American products were available locally, so living there was easy. Our company needed to make inroads here. Getting used to life brought new goals and more comfort. That winter, Emily came from France during her break.
I'm worried about Grandma, so I need to go home to the US. But maybe it's better not to see Mom. I was more concerned about whether you could manage. Dad?
Linda grew up and lived in her hometown, but Emily, having experienced living abroad from a young age, seemed to have more specific concerns. Even when she went to Paris for a language course, it was fun for her at first due to its novelty, but after 2 weeks, the frustration of not being able to communicate and feelings of inferiority overwhelmed her. She got sick of the same food every day and hit a cultural wall. Having experienced that, her study in France after that was much more relaxed, and being better at French made it comfortable. She seemed to enjoy it a lot.
So, Dad, you shouldn't get upset thinking, why is Vietnam like this? Accept everything as a novelty, thinking, so this is normal here. Getting stressed because it's not like the US won't solve anything. It just makes it harder for you.
Seeing Emily giving advice like a counselor, I realized how much she had grown up. Still, the divorce during her absence felt like deceiving my daughter, and I felt guilty. Something must have been wrong or lacking. I feel bad for you.
It's okay.
After the meal, we made sweet Vietnamese coffee and sat down together.
If you can't be happy together, there's no point forcing it. No matter how hard you try, some people just don't mesh. In France, I initially stayed with American people because it was comforting. You can tell what someone is like because the language is the same, right? But gradually, I started feeling maybe this person and I don't click. Conversely, I found that even with foreigners, there are those with whom I strangely get along. Even though our languages and upbringings are different, and our values and everything else should be too, it's enjoyable to be with them. You just naturally get along with some people without effort. I think it's about fate or compatibility. Even if you're family, saying you should get along unconditionally doesn't change the fate or compatibility that exists. I've always struggled with Mom trying to control everything. I wanted to learn swimming, but she forced me into piano lessons because I'm a girl, and then got angry at me for lacking enthusiasm. I hated practicing in front of her, which made me dislike it even more. She also tried to dress me in her preferred style and got mad when I cut my hair short. Yet, when it was time to change clothes for the season, she couldn't even remember where my uniform was, often leaving it at the cleaners. It felt like everything at home was always half done and chaotic. I might not be supposed to say this, but living with her made me determined not to be such a mother.
That's tough, Emily.
But Grandma was always there to help. Mom often scolded her for spoiling me, but I think Mom was really the one depending on her.
To think she can view adults so calmly at just barely 20 years old. The reality was far from the happy family life I had envisioned. Listening to her made me reflect deeply. Emily never had loud clashes with her mother. It was mostly Linda unilaterally attacking her with words. When my mill or I intervened, it only made Linda more heated up. And the more heated up her mother got, the more silent Emily became. I wonder how much she had to swallow her words and feelings, enduring silently.
I think bad conversations should be avoided.
Bad conversations.
Yay, like those that only cause arguments or escalate emotions. It's better not to have them. As my French improved, my social circle widened, but that was to have good relationships, not to outtalk others. Language is there to understand others. Just because we speak the same language doesn't mean we should say everything. Dad, you must have been holding back, too.
Being consoled by my daughter, who had flown from France, I felt a lack of face as a father. But it also felt like seeing the fruits of my labor.
So, Dad, keep up with your Vietnamese.
Her encouragement boosted my spirits. With a newfound resolve to integrate more into the local culture, my life here became more fulfilling. Curious Emily wanted to explore Vietnam. It expanded my world. The commemoration party began with the president's speech and a history presentation, followed by a meal. Just as I returned to the table with my food,
Long time no see.
suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind. It was Linda. "Why are you here?"
Haha, truly. Even after our separation, I guess I'm still connected to this company. My current husband works here, too, in research and development. He's a key figure in this company.
As Linda said this, Lane arrived with 2 glasses of champagne. When the woman in the iodine appeared, Linda's gaze moved from top to bottom, her expression gradually shifting to one of smug amusement.
You did well, finding a spouse in Vietnam. Of course they'd want to follow you back to the US, a developed country. Seems like your trip was worth it, but maybe you could have found someone younger, right? There are plenty of those here in the US.
It's nice to meet you. I am Lane.
Lane introduced herself quietly.
I'm Michael's wife. My husband has always appreciated you.
Lane displayed her fluent English and confident manner. All of Lane seemed to unsettle Linda.
Oh, yes, likewise.
She stammered, and then a man approached. It was Kaylee, the one Linda boasted about from R&D.
What are you doing here?
As he said this and turned around, the glass slipped from his hand and fell. It hit the carpeted floor with a thud, and splashes of beer flew onto the hem of my pants.
Oh my, what happened? Are you okay?
Linda hurried to pick up the cup and looked up at the man. Kaylee was silent, just staring at Lane. Lane didn't stand up to greet this time. However, she kept looking at him.
It's just beer. It won't stain much, right?
Let's just eat.
Okay, let's go, Kaylee.
Linda left a fallen glass on our table and disappeared with Kaylee to another seat. Are you okay? I asked Lane, and she smiled, squatting down where Kaylee had stood.
How about you? Are you really okay?
I'm fine. It's nothing serious. Let's eat. I suggested for us to eat, and we enjoyed our meal together. Throughout the event, various colleagues of mine approached us, making for a bustling round of greetings and introductions. I could see Kaylee glancing over from the crowd, but I deliberately ignored him. Lane never looked back at him either. After a while, 2 radiant figures appeared before me. It was Emily and Ho. Emily was in pink, and Ho was in a deep young grass-colored iodine.
There's so much delicious food. Look, I got greedy.
There's char siu as well.
They exclaimed with a big smile and joined our table. The sight of the 2 young women drew everyone's attention. Linda and Kaylee, this time, were looking over in astonishment. Emily had returned after her graduation and is now working for a company here in the US. My mill had moved into a care facility, and the old house had changed hands. Emily was living independently. She often visited Lane and me, but she never met up with Linda. I wasn't sure what Linda's current husband had told her, but Kaylee was just an eternal deputy manager. There were colleagues at R&D who had attended the wedding between Linda and me. Kaylee had always been problematic. Office romance, broken engagements, infidelity after marriage, and then divorce. And it was a colleague who informed me that the woman he was involved with resembled Linda. It seemed he was quite flustered because he hadn't known about our divorce. It was probably Kaylee who suggested to Linda that my trip to Vietnam was a demotion. Ending up marrying Linda after all his troubles with women might have been the twist of fate Emily talked about. I felt neither anger nor sorrow. I think it would have been worse if I had gone to Vietnam alone while being still married, without knowing it. Emily met Ho, a student from Vietnam, in France, and they hit it off. After Ho returned to Vietnam, she visited both me and her there. Being 4 years older, she must be like a dependable older sister to Emily, who has no siblings. In Vietnam, Emily introduced me to Ho, and through her, I met her mother, Liane. I was already acquainted with Liane from our language classes, so this connection brought us closer. The daughters were pleasantly surprised and happy. Ho, who mastered English and French, returned to Vietnam and secured a job at a multinational corporation due to her language skills. Ho cared for her mother as if compensating for past hardships. She gave many gifts to her and also took her on trips abroad. She took her to Thailand, Cambodia, Singapore, etc. From Vietnam, it only takes an hour or two by plane to these neighboring countries. Liane, who had worked solely for Ho, found herself both delighted and perplexed by these sudden travels. It seemed Ho wanted to make her mother happy, who had lived without luxuries. Ho's filial actions inspired Emily to be exceedingly kind to me. There were times when she brought ingredients from France and cooked French cuisine in Vietnam. Going out to eat with both families and being invited to Liane's home made me believe that it was their presence that allowed us to get married. Watching my daughters, who conversed in French in France, now learning and occasionally mixing Vietnamese and English, was heartwarming. This time, Ho visited New York for the first time. They stayed at our place, but Emily acted as a guide. After a hearty meal, the two of them said they were going out for drinks, left their change of clothes with me, and headed out into the night. Afterward, we slowly stood up from our tea. Walking through the hotel lobby, Kaylee suddenly called out,
"Lion."
Turning around, he was out of breath. He must have made some excuse like needing to go to the bathroom to leave Linda and follow us.
"When did you come to the U.S.? Are you married? Where do you live?"
He bombarded her with questions, to which Liane, in a calm yet dignified voice, responded,
"What do you want with me now?"
Kaylee was at a loss for words, rooted to the spot. Liane turned her back and started walking away. I supported Liane's back and we stepped outside. "Shall we take a walk?" Thinking she might want to calm down, I asked, and she quietly linked her arm with mine, and we walked through the night streets together. "You must be really tired from all the pretense." She just shook her head at what I said, without uttering a word. As we walked in silence, Liane suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" Before I could finish asking her, she crouched down. Rushing over, I embraced her, and she began to cry softly. It must have been hard. Helping her to stand, she sobbed, perhaps releasing years of resentment and longing. Being spared from showing her miserable side to Kaylee might have signified the end of a painful past.
"Thank you,"
she said quietly as we got home. "For what?"
"For everything.
"Everything."
I'm happy now, so let's not dwell on the past."
She chose her words carefully and then smiled. "I feel the same way. If I were still alone, I wouldn't have attended today. It's because you are with me that I could go. I'm grateful for that. We were able to heal our past wounds through this encounter. It's remarkable how two people from different countries and languages could come together like this." Kaylee, unlike me, was sent to Vietnam when he was younger. His stay wasn't long, but that's where he met Liane. She worked in a restaurant catering to tourists. He took a liking to her, frequented the restaurant, and deepened the relationship, claiming he would work in Vietnam for a long time. Then, a year later, he left without a word. He probably intended to do so from the start. He left no business card and canceled his phone line. He broke up with her as soon as she announced her pregnancy. Liane was just 18 when she entered society. She ended up giving birth to Ho alone, without any way to cope. She left her daughter with her mother and sought Kaylee while working. But there was no clue or lead to be found. The apartment she heard was a company dormitory, had no American residents. The building where she was told his office was located had no such company. She realized her naivety. She had heard that American people were polite and kind-hearted. Liane was aware of the arrogance often shown by people from developed countries, a trait that was likely even more pronounced 30 years ago. Kaylee wasn't like that. That's why she was drawn to him. However, it was all a facade. She was left behind as if she never existed. Liane vowed to give Ho the education she never had. Liane thought, Ho must not live a life like hers. Even in a poor country, if one is capable, others will not treat them with disdain. Liane raised Ho with these thoughts. From a young age, Ho was taught English and French and sent to the university on a scholarship which included studying abroad. It seems that watching Ho grow up was what sustained Liane's heart. How deep were the wounds caused by the betrayal? As a fellow American, it was unbearable. The sudden resurgence of Kaylee in Liane's heart happened while looking at the company's website. I was casually watching the New Year's company event. Liane, bringing tea, caught sight of him on the monitor. We had already married, and Liane had decided to move to USA. In such a situation, memories from 30 years ago come back to life. I came to know Kaylee's betrayal for the first time. Still, we decided to attend the anniversary party together. I wanted to show everything with pride, how we were a couple, that Liane was a Vietnamese woman, and how well she had raised Ho. Liane is not a pitiful woman abandoned by a man, but my wife who has raised her child well and maintains a stable home. Emily felt the same way.
We are one family of 4. Let's show that to everyone.
It was also Emily who suggested wearing the IO dye. We were able to showcase what we had achieved in life, and it was a proud night. The next day, Linda contacted me.
I want to meet and talk.
What's the matter this time? You want to bill me for dry cleaning or something?
Don't play dumb. Please come after work tomorrow. I need to talk to you.
She asked me to meet her at a cafe. It was typical of her to call all the shots.
Who's that woman?
Linda asked bluntly as soon as we sat down. She's family. You and your husband came together, right? It's the same for us.
You must know something. Tell me. Yesterday, my husband left me behind and chased after you too, didn't he? I know about it.
Then asked Kaylee if you want to know. Are you keeping secrets even though you're a married couple?
Just tell me.
It seemed Kaylee didn't spill the beans. When I told her everything, she blamed me for bringing Liane to such a place.
Are you implying she's going to start demanding alimony or child support out of the blue now? Is she trying to extort us by showing up in public like this?
Did Kaylee say that? I barely controlled my voice when I said that. I might have shouted if we weren't in public. My intensity made Linda flinch. Don't play dumb. You're the one who approached us in public, remember? We just want to live our lives without any connection to you two. She doesn't need Kale's help. She's raised her daughter splendidly. Even Emily looks up to her. I'm proud of her too. You left me behind when I was transferred overseas. You couldn't bring yourself to go with me, and you ran away. I still hate being seen that way. So yesterday was a good opportunity for you to see the person I've become. There's no reason for us to avoid public attention. We have nothing to hide. You wanted to show off your current husband. Well, if that's all you wanted, then be satisfied with that.
You're so cunning, dragging Emily into this.
Linda said that with a sulky tone. Emily knows how difficult life overseas can be, so she's always been concerned about me. Have you ever done anything like that? Even when Emily went to Paris as a high school student, she went willingly. And what did you do? You just left her to her own devices. You simply said she should study hard because you spent a lot of money sending her there. She told me that's all you ever said.
You've always used Emily to treat me like an afterthought and sidelined me, haven't you? And now what's this? Marrying your colleague's ex-girlfriend without even knowing her? Or is it a jab at me? Are you planning to play the role of her daughter's father since you know who her real father is? Look at yourself. I'm the one who should be ashamed of you.
That's why our daughter keeps her distance from you, because you always live life centered around yourself. My words seem to sharpen Linda's gaze. Isn't it always like this with you? You never understand anyone else's feelings. If you lack the ability to understand others, shouldn't you at least try to imagine and think about it? And what about lying being a woman from the past? How would you feel if the same happened to our daughter? Could you just sit idly by? Your current husband is that kind of man. How would you feel now that you know he did something like that? Anyone would normally speak up about it, wouldn't they? If your husband betrayed someone and caused them suffering, shouldn't you, as his wife, feel remorse? All you think about is alimony, threats, and self-preservation. I'm utterly disgusted. Is this your own selfishness, or is it a message from Kaylee? You and he make quite the pair. I stood up and started walking, but then I turned back suddenly. From now on, stay away from us completely. Tell him the same. He's cut off everything and ran away. Whether it's regret or remorse, I don't know, but my wife wants nothing to do with it. There are no plans to meet or let our daughters meet any of you. Is that clear? It's your problem now. You can dig up the past, be disappointed, or do whatever you want. It has nothing to do with us. Even if there are rumors at work, we're not involved. Deal with it yourself, like the mess you've made.
And Emily, give me her contact information. You lied about her getting a job over there. I didn't hear anything about her being in the US. What's going on? She didn't even report back to me, her mother, about returning to the country. Are you behind this?
I couldn't help but sigh. You always play the victim. As a mother, did you ever try to reach out or initiate contact? You only push your agenda when it suits you. And then when our daughter starts avoiding you and you can't get in touch, you blame her. With that attitude, she will never contact you again. I headed outside towards the subway station. I had to get home quickly. Today, I was supposed to cook Vietnamese food with Lian and Ho. If I'm late, Emily will be upset with me. As I was being swayed on the subway, I remembered Kaylee from yesterday. Why did he approach us? Was it out of nostalgia for lying? Or did he want to see Ho? Despite the risk of rumors spreading among the employees, he still called out to us in public. He must not have forgotten the past. Did he think Lion would feel nostalgic about him? But there is no past that can be recovered. That's going to be the path of his life. Poor guy. The subway doors opened, and I hurriedly got off the platform and rushed up the stairs. I never realized how happy it would be to come home. It's almost childish. In the second half of my one and only life, I'm savoring the happiness of the present once again. A social gathering planned to deepen the camaraderie between companies. The new director, Michael Smith, said something unbelievable upon seeing me and my wife.
We didn't prepare a seat for you guys. Subcontractor, please head back home.
Could you call the CEO right now?
My wife, Emily, retorted instantly, to which Michael gaped in astonishment.
Huh? There's no way I can call the busy CEO just for some subcontractors. We can find a replacement for you guys anytime.
So you're saying you can't call the CEO? Then we'll be leaving.
Emily said as she grabbed my arm and headed for the exit. That's when President Brown, a client, appeared on the scene. As he listened to the story, his complexion turned pale, and he eventually started to tremble. My name is Christopher Williams. I'm a 42-year-old man living with my beloved wife, Emily. I run a factory that manufactures mechanical parts, which originally belonged to my Phil, Alex. I met Emily during college. I've always loved machinery and studied mechanical engineering in college, with the hope of creating something new that would shape the future of society. However, reality wasn't so simple, and I faced many challenges in my experiments. Despite the repeated disappointments and setbacks, I kept on experimenting, thinking it might have been all in vain. It was during those times of facing difficulties over and over again and feeling utterly lost that Emily came to my side. Whenever she saw me struggling with an experiment, she would quickly solve the problem and tell me,
Christopher, you were almost there in solving the problem. The difference between you and me is whether you believe it can definitely be done.
She said with a smile, and I was completely charmed by her. There's a difference in the outcome between tackling something with the belief that it can be done and doing it while thinking it can't be done. Emily taught me that, and since then, I've never given up and continue to work hard until the very end. This resulted in developing a strong mentality that somehow I could make it work even without much basis or experience. This perseverance to believe that things will work out in the end has helped me overcome various challenges in life. Emily herself possessed this vitality. One day, she quietly said to me,
I have a dream.
A dream? I asked, unable to predict her answer. She nodded firmly.
To make my father's factory the #1 in the U.S. That's my dream.
Eventually, Emily and I spent our college years as good friends. After graduation, I got a job at a local machinery manufacturing plant. I was passionate about pursuing more precise and advanced technology, which resonated with my sentiments. Then, I reunited with Emily, my college classmate. And to my surprise, the factory was managed by her father. Trying my best to get accustomed to the job, the president, who was Emily's father and often visited the factory, approached me.
You're the new guy, huh? I've heard you're very enthusiastic about your work.
Thank you. I'm just happy to be working with machines every day. I passionately shared my passion for manufacturing with the president. I told him about my university specialization and the future potential of America's manufacturing industry. I now think it was quite presumptuous of a young person like me to speak so grandly. However, the president listened intently, without interrupting, and seemed genuinely interested.
I'm glad to have a passionate young man like you join our company. How about you learn even more?
Following that, the president began to personally teach me the finer points of the job. This is how I came to be directly mentored by the president.
Christopher, you don't have a girlfriend, do you?
No, I don't at the moment. One day, the president suddenly asked me, and the first thing that came to my mind was Emily's smile from our college days.
Then how about my daughter Emily? You're close in age, and she understands the factory work well.
Thus, our relationship, which I thought would remain just friendship, slowly progressed, and after about 2 years of dating, we got married. United by the goal of making her father's factory the best in the U.S., we have been leading a happy married life. Then, suddenly, my Alex fell. Fortunately, I was nearby, so I was able to call an ambulance immediately and have him taken to the hospital. Though he barely clung to life, Alex, who already had a heart condition, ended up significantly weakened.
I've caused you all a lot of worry, but I got to see my daughter in her bridal gown and found a successor for the factory. Honestly, I have no regrets.
He said, lying in his hospital bed, looking pale. But of course, that wasn't enough for us. Believing it was too early to be satisfied, Emily and I, along with everyone at the factory, worked hard to keep things going until Alex could return. As a result, he gradually recovered and was able to return to the factory after 3 months. However, even though he had recovered, there was no telling when he might fall again. At his urging, while he was still healthy, I formally took over and became the manager of the factory. I had been working there already and had learned how to manage from him, but I still faced many challenges at first. I must have looked pretty bad coming home because I worried Emily.
Are you okay? Are you pushing yourself too hard?
It's tough, but I want to meet your dad's expectations. And since I'm a young manager, I don't want to be underestimated, so I want to learn as much as I can now. Indeed, once the leadership transitioned from Alex to me, some spiteful clients seemed to test our limits. Still, thanks to Emily's support and Alex's trust, I've been able to keep pushing forward. 2 years flew by, and just as I was getting the hang of management, we found out Emily was pregnant. We named our son Lucas. Holding Lucas, Alex couldn't help but shed tears of joy. Seeing Alex, Emily, and our newborn Lucas together as 3 generations of our family brought a smile to my face too. Having my precious son further motivated me. Thanks to that, I've become even more dedicated to my work, finding my own way of doing things differently from Alex and overcoming various difficulties that came our way. About 10 years later, I was puzzled to hear that Miller, a manager and our main client, had been transferred. It was an odd time for a personnel change, and there had been no indication from Miller that this was coming. I became curious about what happened to Miller, so I inquired with another contact at our client, and it appears he was dismissed. I was shocked at the magnitude of the mistake he must have made, especially since the specific reasons were not disclosed. As a subcontractor, I'm out of the loop on the details, and all I can do is wait for the new director who will be taking over. I've heard that the new director, Michael Smith, is around my age. He graduated from a prestigious university, unlike me, Considering we're going to have a long-term relationship, I'm bracing myself for what's ahead. Though I'm saddened by Miller's departure, given how much he's helped us, my priority is to greet the new director. When I informed our client that I would come to greet the new director soon, I realized I also had to let Alex know.
So that's what happened. I'll check on it from my end. You focus on the factory,
he said with a complex expression I hadn't seen before. Things changed the next day. While I was giving instructions and making rounds in the factory as usual, a man appeared. I had no idea who he was, so I was puzzled until he walked straight up to me.
I'm Michael Smith, the new director. I've taken over this factory's account from the previous person.
You're Michael, then. I'm looking forward to working with you. Facing Michael, who confidently crosses his arms and looks down on me, I'll make sure to greet him politely. However, he stared at me rudely without responding.
I came all the way here, and you're not even going to offer a cup of coffee.
My apologies. I wasn't thoughtful enough. Hurrying to prepare coffee while enduring his cold gaze. From past experiences, I've learned it's best to just smile and play along with these types of people. They'll be satisfied and leave without causing any problems. As I handed him the coffee while smiling, he seemed to lighten up as expected. Leaning back contentedly, he sipped his coffee with a displeasing look in his eyes.
It seems you know your place.
However, Miller would always greet us with a warm smile, saying, "Thank you for your hard work." In contrast, Michael was just crossing his arms and looking around the factory. It felt like this wouldn't be easy, and just then, I started feeling uneasy.
How are you doing?
Emily came along with Lucas, stopping in her tracks. That's right. She mentioned she'd bring Lucas by today. As I remembered this, Michael unexpectedly exclaimed,
"What? You're Emily."
Michael, is that you?
Both of them looked surprised to see each other, and I was just as shocked. It seemed they knew each other, but Michael continued, still looking stunned.
So, that child is your son. I figured since you're the factory owner's daughter, you'd have married some low-level worker.
Yes, I did. But what's that to you? Who I marry is none of your business, right?
Emily easily dodged the insult thrown by Michael. Then, she stood beside me with Lucas.
This man is my husband. He's someone important who helps me uplift this factory.
Lucas innocently showed me his elementary school quiz, looking for praise. While I praised Lucas with a smile, I was taken aback by Michael's reaction. For a moment, it felt like he was glaring at me intently. However, he quickly reverted to a smug expression and began openly mocking Emily.
So, you married a bottom-rung worker for the sake of your family's factory. Regretting your life choices yet?
Michael looked down on both Emily and me. I was pretty irritated inside but managed to control my feelings, knowing that our elementary school-aged son, Lucas, was watching. At that moment, Emily smiled brightly.
I'm incredibly happy to be married to him.
Her smile dissolved my irritation, filling me with joy instead.
What a waste of time.
Michael said after observing our interaction, clicking his tongue and leaving the factory. What a terrible person.
Really, he's just as unpleasant to know now as he ever was.
Emily lightly explained that Michael was a high school classmate of hers. Seeing her grimace at the mention of him, I decided not to press further. Still, having such a troublesome person as our contact was distressing. However, I soon forgot about my complaints against Michael when we were informed of a major project underway. Our factory's products were to play a crucial role in it, so I focused all my energy there. Yet, just when things were getting busy, Michael contacted me again. Expecting it to be about the project's progress, I nervously picked up the phone, only to be baffled by his words.
What was with your attitude last time? I, the director, personally made the effort to visit, and I didn't expect such disrespectful treatment.
I deeply apologize for any inconvenience caused. I said, apologizing, but Michael just kept ranting.
Unlike subcontractor like you, I have a promising future. Remember, I could end our deal with just one word.
After saying his piece, he hung up. I was astounded he called just to say that. Then another call came in from a different employee. Apparently, to ensure the success of the large project, a social gathering will be organized for all involved companies. If it had not been for a hurried confirmation call from another employee, who saw Michael calling us without passing on critical information, I would have missed the gathering entirely. I thanked the employee profusely and confirmed my schedule. While I was free, the thought of meeting Michael at the event made me sigh. On the day of gathering, I arrived early just in case. Emily came with me, and we looked around for any familiar faces. The place was still sparse with early arrivals when suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind.
Why is a poor factory's bottom-rung worker here?
It was Michael, who had spotted me and decided to start trouble immediately. I couldn't just ignore him. He looked at Emily and me, laughing mockingly.
What are you doing here? Don't you realize you're out of place? Today's gathering is for respectable company executives, not subcontractors like you.
His loud laughter drew the attention of others, making them look our way. I tried to escape the awkward situation by giving him a polite nod with a forced smile. I'm sorry, I'm going to greet some other people.
I'm not done talking yet.
I tried to get away from him, but he seemed determined not to let us go. As I was pondering what to do about this troublesome situation, he came closer, looking down on us with a chuckle.
You don't have a seat here. Subcontractor, please leave.
Then, could you call the CEO right now?
Emily retorted instantly, to which Michael's eyes widened in surprise.
There's no way I can call the busy CEO just for some subcontractors. There are plenty of others to replace you.
You can't call the CEO. Then we'll have to withdraw from the project.
Emily said, taking my arm and heading for the exit. Michael, looking smug as if he had succeeded in driving us away, showed no signs of trying to stop us. That's when it happened.
Christopher.
The one calling me with a puzzled look was Kevin Brown, the CEO of a client company. I stopped in my tracks and smiled to him. Kevin, you've arrived early.
I heard you would be here, so I thought I'd come to greet him and hear about his recent situation.
He said, probably referring to Alex. Alex and Kevin have had a relationship for over 30 years since the company was founded, but I had heard that since Alex fell and I took over as CEO, the opportunities for them to meet had decreased significantly.
Anyway, why are you leaving? The gathering is about to start.
Actually, while I doubted it would lead anywhere, I explained everything to Kevin. I'm just a subcontractor, and we don't have much of a personal relationship. I wouldn't be surprised if he laughed off what I said. But I hoped for the friendship that had lasted many years between him and Alex. As he listened to my story, his face turned pale, and he began to tremble.
I'm so sorry. This is entirely Michael's fault. I'll make sure he's punished in a way that satisfies you. So please, don't leave.
His desperate attempt to keep me from leaving surprised not just us.
What are you saying to these subcontractors, sir? These people have no respect for client companies, just lowly, poor subcontractor.
What are you talking about? Haven't you read the documents for this project?
He thundered at Michael, who had approached us with a smug smile. It seemed Michael had not anticipated being reprimanded. Ignoring Michael, who stood with his mouth agape, Kevin clung to my hand.
I'll leave it up to you, Christopher, and take no responsibility. Please, participate in the project.
Then, I'll proceed as I see fit. I confirmed with Kevin, who nodded firmly.
What about the gathering, Ben?
We'll be leaving for today. We need to rethink our approach to the project. Kevin looked down, disappointed.
I'm truly sorry about this.
He apologized deeply, and we returned a greeting before finally leaving the venue. As he saw us off, he handed me a small note. It contained the name and phone number of the former director, Miller. I thought about contacting this number as soon as I got home. Of course, I also had to report this incident to Alex. As we quickened our pace, the sound of Kevin sternly reprimanding Michael could be heard behind us. The next day, Michael stormed into my factory, his face red with anger.
Hey, bring out Christopher. Come out and explain what this is all about.
As soon as he entered the factory, Michael started shouting. After receiving a call, I headed straight to the reception room to face Michael, whose face was twitching with anger, his mouth clenched tightly.
What do you mean the project can't proceed without parts from your factory?
That was detailed in the documents provided beforehand. After reading those, Michael, you decided we were unnecessary and sent us away, didn't you? Surprised to hear me speak up for the first time, he fell silent. Seemingly fragile to just a bit of pushback, he had nothing to say after just one retort. If that's all you wanted to discuss, could you please leave? I said, pointing towards the exit, but he weakly shook his head.
Look, I heard from the president. Is it true you're not participating in the project? Our president and your former president were good friends, weren't they? Think it over.
After discussing with the former president, we decided to terminate the contract. Subcontractors like us are dime a dozen, right? Michael turned pale and started sweating profusely at my words. I knew why he was so panicked. Without our factory, the project couldn't proceed. This project was based on a product for which I hold a patent. Diverging from Alex's management approach to secure a patent was my strategy. In addition to running the factory daily, I've been developing prototypes for a product I began researching in university. With Emily's help, who I met at the same university, it took us 2 years to successfully develop the prototype. Our patented product significantly improved the factory's profits. And it led to this project. Without our product, the entire large-scale project would fall apart. Despite being a project participant, Michael was unaware of this crucial detail. If he had thoroughly read the documents, He would have understood our factory's importance, but he likely skimmed over them, dismissing us as just another subcontractor.
Don't you have any sense of responsibility? If this project fails, how will you make it right?
If that happens, I suppose I'll have to take responsibility. But no worries, we've already signed with another company. At my words, Michael gasped for breath and widened his eyes. I nearly burst into laughter at his expression. On the day of the gathering, I called the contact given by Kevin, which was Miller's number. Miller was starting a new company.
Actually, I'm receiving support from Kevin. Would you consider signing a contract with us?
Miller, who approached us with this proposal, detailed what happened when he resigned from his previous company. He attempted to complain to the upper management about harassment from Michael. But it seems his efforts were squashed by a faction favoring Michael among the top executives. Fearing he'd collapse under the pressure, Miller decided to resign. Upon submitting his resignation, Kevin approached him and suggested starting a new company as a subsidiary. Kevin was also fed up with the scheming of the vice president's faction. Their influence reached the core of the company, making it difficult for even the president to implement changes. Thus, the strategy was to gradually move talented employees, centered around the capable Miller, to the subsidiary. In light of these events, my factory, which produces essential products, was introduced to Miller's company, leading to a contract between us. Michael, upon hearing this, turned red with anger.
Don't mess around. If this project falls through, we'll face losses in the millions. Just sign back with us already.
But you were the one who initially deemed us unnecessary, right? We've already signed with a new company and are participating in their project, so it's impossible to contract with you now. I firmly declined Michael's repeated pleas. After about 30 minutes of back and forth, he finally realized it was futile and slumped in defeat. He trudged out of the factory, and we went back to our usual work. Months later, Kevin visited our factory. Since then, he has been working on restructuring the company to counter the faction supporting Michael.
I've caused you so much trouble this time. How can I possibly apologize?
After deeply apologizing to me, Kevin starts to discuss what will happen. Michael, who had shown promise when he joined a company, started acting recklessly after gaining the vice president's favor. He caused trouble in various departments before our conflict. No one dared to confront him due to his strong connections. As a result, he developed a misguided confidence, believing he could do anything because of his perceived importance. This led him to unnecessarily involve us, subcontractors he disliked, in trouble at the social gathering. Even when reprimanded by the president, he showed no signs of remorse.
I just did my job the way I saw fit. There are plenty of factories to go around, so it doesn't matter how they're treated.
He brazenly claimed, angering the usually calm Kevin and resulting in his transfer to another department.
I hate to make excuses, but Michael was appointed during my long-term overseas business trip. I only saw the performance numbers and failed to grasp his character, which led to this inconvenience.
Kevin apologized again. Later, we heard from an acquaintance that Michael resigned. Although he avoided dismissal after the vice president faced significant accountability and resigned, the leak of this incident had him facing cold stares from everyone in the company. Moreover, although not fired, He was moved to a department responsible for compiling a company's history, a job with neither challenge nor fulfillment. Frustrated, he eventually resigned on his own.
He had a terrible personality, but he was supposed to be smart.
Emily mused, acknowledging that he had indeed been competent. Despite everything, he had achieved enough to be recognized by Kevin as a director on paper. But ultimately, becoming a director led Michael to his downfall. Maybe it was because of me that he went off the rails. I wondered, back in high school, Michael, who was Emily's classmate, had harbored feelings for her. However, his attempts to get her attention by belittling the factory her father ran only pushed her further away.
Never talk to me again. I don't even want you near me,
she had declared, cutting him off completely after graduation. Despite this, once we became adults, Michael, learning that his company was dealing with Emily's factory and buoyed by his position as a director, attempted to reach out. However, by then, she was already married to me with a child in elementary school, completely dashing his hopes.
To think he'd harass you out of jealousy. It's just so childish and unbearable. I'm sorry for causing you trouble.
Emily apologized, though I wasn't angry at all. In fact, her decisive handling of the situation made me feel more confident that together, we could overcome anything the factory faced. After his resignation, Michael struggled to find new employment due to the scandal becoming widespread, leading to repeated rejections. After draining his savings and leaving his home, he fell into poverty, living day to day on borrowed money. While juggling various odd jobs, apologizing to younger supervisors wounded his pride, which led to a cycle of short-lived employment. Now, whenever he gets a bit of cash, he drowns himself in cheap alcohol, facing complaints from neighbors in his low-cost apartment. It seems he might soon be lost to the streets. On the other hand, I am still working with my factory colleagues as an owner. The relationship with a new company led by Miller is going well, filled with eager transactions that leave me satisfied. Kevin's company is gradually returning to a healthy state. I'm looking forward to resuming our deals, a sentiment Alex shares. Moreover, now that Lucas has grown and become more independent as a middle schooler, Emily has found time to assist with the factory work. I'm determined to keep pushing hard for my family and this important factory. Even if new challenges arise, I'm confident we can overcome them together. One day, we will realize Emily's dream of making this factory the best in the U.S. With this hope, I step into the factory today, believing that if we tackle our tasks with the conviction that we can do it, success will surely follow.
Just as the company was getting on track, the female president was framed by the management team, including the vice president, and fired from a company. I couldn't stand still seeing her, whom I greatly respect, looking so disappointed. We started the business together, and we're about to mark 1 year since we began from scratch when we learned that our previous company was on the verge of bankruptcy.
Who are you exactly?
It's no surprise you don't know. I've been careful to keep it a secret from you alone. Because I'm your. My name is David Miller. Currently, I work as a programmer for a company that has launched an app. I started as a contractor and am not yet a full-time employee, so I haven't fully settled into this company.
David, could you come here for a sec?
Yes, what is it?
There's something I'm curious about. Could you check it out for me?
Sure, I'm on it. Emily is the president of the app company where I work. She is quite beautiful, almost as beautiful as an actress. However, she's strict with herself and others. You can't do this, can't you use your head a bit more, or you're really useless, are the kind of sharp words I've seen her use. But, given her position as the president, I think it's natural for her to tighten up slack employees and correct the atmosphere. Still, being a female president, some male employees didn't like her intense way of speaking. I've heard male employees grumbling outdated complaints like, "Don't get cocky just because you're a woman." The fact remains that there are still employees who resent being talked down to by a female boss. I've sensed an atmosphere where being reprimanded by a beautiful woman is even more annoying. I was a bit impressed that being good-looking can sometimes work against her. There's another female executive in this app development company, Jessica, who's practically the president in terms of power, though her official title is the vice president. It turns out Emily and Jessica attended the same prestigious private university. These two alumni were classmates and hit it off in university, always sticking together since meeting. Compared to the actress like Emily, Jessica may lack in glamour. But it seems Jessica's physique is overwhelmingly more popular with men.
Our company has two great women, Emily and Jessica.
Indeed.
Which one do you prefer?
Well, that's a tough call.
I've debated in my mind about who's more attractive.
You must have a lot of free time.
I won't deny that, but hear me out.
What is it then?
As a result of my internal debate, I gave the edge to Emily.
Emily is certainly beautiful, but isn't her personality a bit harsh?
That might be true, but her face is just my type.
I prefer Jessica, man. She could be a bikini model.
I've heard conversations like this several times. In addition, Jessica tends to be more gentle with employees than Emily. Generally, people gravitate towards those who treat them kindly. No one wants to deal with harsh words unnecessarily. But probably, the two have their roles set, and they were just fulfilling them. I vaguely remember overhearing parts of their conversations.
We can't be taken lightly just because we're two women in charge as the president and vice president.
I distinctly remember these words from a conversation between Emily and Jessica. Emily is the president and Jessica is the vice president, apparently because Emily invited Jessica to start the business together. Emily became president simply because she initiated the idea, but their abilities are almost the same. The two, who were close enough to start a business together, have been at odds recently. I don't know the details. However, there was a pervasive atmosphere in the office suggesting that the two were on the verge of a fallout. I've never actually seen them arguing, but conversations among employees inevitably reach my ears.
Hey, have you heard that Emily and Jessica are both in a bad mood lately?
I've heard such talk, but I don't know the real situation.
I've never seen the two of them actually going at it either.
Right? There are rumors, but nothing direct.
But a junior employee saw them arguing in front of a taxi.
I've heard before that they had arguments.
But in the end, that was just a rumor, right?
True, I've never actually seen them fighting.
My junior wouldn't just make up a lie to tell me.
That's true, but it's worrying to hear these rumors of fights more frequently now.
Yeah. It would be better if they got along well.
I've overheard such conversations among colleagues while eating pasta in the cafeteria. Lately, there have been frequent talks about Emily and Jessica clashing, so it might be true. Just when I was thinking this, Emily called me to discuss some ideas for a new app development. She said, "Whenever you're free," so I went to the president's office after finishing my lunch. Emily usually spends a lot of time in her office, working on ideas or on her computer. So I expected her to be there, doing her usual work. But I encountered something completely unexpected. Just as I was about to knock on the door to the president's office, I heard Jessica's yelling like I'd never heard before. The voice was loud enough to hear through the door. Then I noticed the door was slightly ajar, just a few centimeters. I decided to continue eavesdropping discreetly, making sure not to be noticed. After all, I had finally caught the tail end of the rumors, and I couldn't let this opportunity slip away.
I've told you already, you are no longer needed in this company.
What's going on? I don't understand what you're saying.
Didn't I just say? You're fired.
That makes no sense. What do you mean?
You used to be praised for your intelligence, but now you can't grasp such a simple matter? You've really gone downhill.
That's because it's nonsensical, so of course I can't understand.
All right, I'll say it again, listen carefully. You've been leaking company information, haven't you?
I really don't know what you're talking about.
I don't want to suspect you of such a thing, but there are records and evidence.
Show me that evidence.
Jessica sighed deeply, her voice slightly strained as she resumed speaking.
Anyway, your dismissal can't be reversed.
What do you mean?
Because you're no longer the managing director.
That can't just be decided by you alone.
You missed the extraordinary shareholders meeting because you had other important commitments, right?
Yes. What about it? Don't tell me.
At that meeting, your role as the managing director was terminated, so now I'm the sole director.
Emily was speechless, stunned by the reality, and seemed unable to speak for a while. The silence was piercing. I wondered what expression Jessica was wearing now. Emily finally managed to say,
No matter what I do, you won't listen to me.
That's what I've been saying from the start. Your dismissal is irrevocable.
What a thing to happen.
Jessica declared loudly, with a slight sneer in her voice as if she had been waiting for Emily's spirit to break.
There's no place for you in the company anymore. Your dismissal will be communicated to everyone in the company by the end of today.
Phew.
Just grab your belongings and leave as soon as possible.
I will.
Why don't you get some comfort from William? You're dating him, aren't you?
How do you know that?
Actually, William is my man now.
What's that supposed to mean?
You really haven't noticed, have you? He's so into me now, he won't go back to you.
Jessica said triumphantly, laughing mockingly.
Call William if you want, though he might not answer your calls.
After a while, I couldn't hear their voices anymore, and I strained my ears to listen. What was happening? Why were they both silent? As I stood there pondering in front of the door, it suddenly opened from the inside, and Emily, pale-faced, noticed me. I was caught off guard, not expecting the conversation to end and her to come out so suddenly. I turned to leave quickly, but Emily grabbed my right arm and looked at me sadly. I nodded slightly, making sure Jessica wouldn't notice. Then, I took Emily's arm and led her to my car, where no other employees were around. I sat in the driver's seat, and Emily sat in the back. Her face in the rearview mirror looked lifeless, like a shell of her former self. I doubted if anything I said would help, but I had to speak. I accidentally overheard your conversation, I said, looking at Emily's downcast face in the mirror. Not saying anything further, Emily, puzzled, finally looked up, and our eyes met in the mirror. That's when I said, I want to help you, Emily. After hearing that conversation, I just had to do something. In the end, Emily left the company, just as the vice president Jessica had planned. Honestly, I wanted to expose Jessica's lies and actions. But Emily didn't want to waste any more time on the company. They had started the company as close friends from university and led it to significant success. Being ousted from a company in such an unfair manner and having her boyfriend taken away was devastating. It wouldn't be surprising if she remained down and unable to recover for months or even years. If it were me, I'd be out of action for at least 3 months. But all my worries were unfounded for her.
There's no way I'd be crushed by something like this.
For a normal person, this would be a situation that could knock them down for a while.
That's for ordinary people, right? I'm not ordinary.
Indeed, you're as beautiful as an actress, so you're not ordinary.
That's not what I'm talking about.
I know, that was a joke.
I realize that, David. You're trying to lighten the mood.
Just please accept it honestly. Despite this banter, I was pleased to see Emily becoming lively enough to joke around in such a short time. I quit my job as a contract programmer. I just can't find the motivation to work in a place where Emily is not around. Leaving was already in my plans. I hadn't decided what to do next. However, when Emily asked if I wanted to start a business together, my decision was made instantly. Of course, having said I'd follow Emily, I was indeed ready to go wherever she went. But even I was surprised we started moving on it in just 2 weeks after leaving the previous company. Emily, it seems you worked really hard at the previous company.
So what?
Shouldn't you take a break? Maybe go on a vacation.
What are you talking about? I'm not so defeated that I'll just sit silently and look down after being unjustly beaten down.
Strike while the iron is hot.
You get it.
And so, we embarked on a new business venture together. We both became the executive directors of our new company, with Emily as the president and me as the vice president. My title didn't matter to me. I just strongly wanted Emily to make a comeback as the president. So I was happy to be working with her again.
I want to hit it big with an app that leverages all my experience and knowledge.
Indeed, the experiences you've had become part of your essence.
Yes, it might overlap with popular apps in the market, but we'll add our own twist.
Right. Originality is all about how you combine different ideas.
That's right. Then we'll turn my ideas into an app with David's expertise.
I'll do my best to meet your expectations. Emily loved to cook and was quite skilled at it. She didn't hate instant or junk food, though. Being a busy president, she often settled for pizza or burgers due to lack of time. However, I've heard her say, cooking on my day off blows away the stress. Emily was interested in a recipe app. There are already many apps out there that offer simple recipes for delicious meals in a short time. Isn't entering this app market now a bit challenging? I couldn't help but ask, but Emily was determined. So, I dedicated myself to figuring out how to encapsulate her ideas into an app. We spent an incredible amount of time making the recipes user-friendly, adjusting the layout, and ensuring users could easily and intuitively upload photos of their dishes. We even made it possible for recipe creators to easily produce cooking videos. We thoroughly researched existing recipe apps and brought Emily's challenging ideas to life with my programming skills. Our recipe app initially struggled in a crowded market. The download numbers were not growing, and we were both worried over coffee. But gradually, the strengths of our app became known, and it even reached #1 in the recipe app rankings at one point. Breaking through in such a market is tough because well-known apps have a strong advantage. Even if other apps have similar or better features, people tend to use the ones they know. Once we broke through, the potential for further success opened up. When our app reached #1 in the rankings, we celebrated with a modest meal. That meant ordering some upscale pizza and drinking beer at the office.
Has it been half a year since we left that company? We've made good progress, haven't we?
I think we've both worked really hard.
Yeah. I feel like I've thought of nothing but the app for the past 6 months.
My mind was full of figuring out how to implement those ideas. Emily and I shared a contented smile and toasted with new cans of beer. About 8 months had passed since Emily and I left the company and started our own. The download numbers for our app had stabilized, and we were receiving increasing feedback about its high quality. This, in turn, led to more downloads and paying users. Just as we were confident of more success, Emily came to me with a look of urgency. "What's going on? It's 2 a.m. I said, awakened by persistent buzzing from the intercom, obviously frustrated. Emily, unconcerned about my mood, thrust her smartphone in front of me and said, "Look at this. This
looks just like our app, doesn't it?"
The format is indeed strikingly similar.
That's not all.
Emily then explained how the app on her phone closely resembled the one we created. Isn't this a copyright infringement?
It's designed right on the edge, barely avoiding copyright violation.
But still, the concept and content look the same.
Yes, exactly. Which company is behind this?
Emily suddenly fell silent, and I immediately understood. It was the company Jessica runs, the one we left. Taking advantage of our small company size, Jessica must be planning to crush us by capitalizing on our app idea. Why is Jessica going so hard against you? They used to be close friends.
I don't know, but...
Emily hesitated to continue. Just say it. You seem to have an idea of the cause. She started to speak in a low voice.
Jessica began to develop a complex towards me, feeling angry that no matter how hard she tried, she could never surpass me.
Did Jessica tell you that directly?
Not directly, but William, the guy she took from me.
So, he didn't know Jessica well at that time.
Probably. If she had been plotting against me since then, I can only take my hat off to her.
Jessica's company's app was ranking higher than the one Emily and I made. Looking into it, they had spent a significant amount on advertising. Since the app was alright payoff of my work, I understood why it quickly became popular once it was known.
We can't win this. The difference in capital is too much.
Emily, with a resigned expression and tears welling up in her eyes, told me.
Continuing to update the same app will only lead to it being stolen in the end.
Eventually, tears streamed down her face, and she collapsed to her knees. I knelt down with her, took her hands, and looked straight into her eyes, saying, "It's okay, Emily, can you leave everything to me?" Since the discovery of the app plagiarism, I had completely overhauled our app. I used advanced programming techniques to ensure that even if Jessica's company tried, they couldn't replicate our work. While keeping the interface the same, I improved usability, startup time, and graphics resolution, pouring in the best of my abilities. Thanks to these improvements, our app's user ratings soared within days, and Jessica's company, which copied our app, received a flood of complaints. Their app, being too similar to ours, was mistaken for ours and criticized for slow startup times and poor graphics. Eventually, Jessica's company was overwhelmed with complaints, and it was even suggested that they bring out their programmer to fix things faster, implying a desire for my expertise. In her humiliation, Jessica herself must have called me. Naturally, I hung up immediately. When Emily heard about the rapid and impressive updates to our app and Jessica's situation, she asked,
"Were you always this amazing?"
Then, I revealed to Emily that we had actually met a long time ago. We first encountered each other during my middle school days. Not in a romantic context, but when Emily was a student teacher doing her practicum at my school. At that time, I was living aimlessly, without any motivation or passion. I was just living because the days kept coming, feeling a sense of void in the meaningless routine. During that time, Emily, who was a student teacher, taught us programming. It was a middle school beginner's course, but I was more captivated by Emily's beauty than the subject itself. Enticed by her, I paid attention to the programming lessons and tried it out as instructed. After practicing a bit, I realized that learning programming allowed me to create my own worldview. If I assembled the programming language correctly, it executed tasks like magic. That's when I became hooked on programming. I dragged out an old computer at home and started learning from the very basics on my own. As a middle schooler, I watched programming tutorials online, bought textbooks, and went through trial and error repeatedly. With each programming session, I definitely felt an improvement, gaining a sense of fulfillment that was vastly different from the monotonous daily life I had been leading. For that alone, I am deeply grateful to Emily for teaching me programming. Since high school, I competed in prestigious programming contests, winning numerous grand prizes.
We get it. You're amazing. So please just stop showing up.
As I frequented these competitions, familiar faces became common. The top programmers, naturally, ranked high, so it was inevitable that my name became well known. I kept coming out on top in the competitions over and over. The competitors who came close but couldn't beat me probably saw me as a thorn in their side. Cut it out. Don't blame me for your lack of skills. I dismissed those comments as pure envy and continued competing in the contests, winning grand prizes until I was satisfied. Because I kept winning, some people viewed me with jealousy and hostility, but the majority recognized me as an exceptionally talented programmer. Achievements don't lie. Ever since middle school, when I first got interested in programming, I've been determined to beat anyone in my path. I pride myself on that effort. I'm truly a wizard of programming. There was no way I wouldn't help Emily, the one who introduced me to programming. That's why I immediately applied when Emily's company was looking for programmers. I wanted to be there for her. I've always wanted to express my gratitude to her. It's understandable she didn't recognize me. I had changed a lot since middle school, with a vastly different appearance and hairstyle. I finally feel like I've been able to repay you, I said, feeling embarrassed and looking away from her gaze.
Come to think of it, I vaguely remember a kid whose bangs were so long they covered his eyes, yet he easily mastered complex programming tasks.
That was definitely me. Back in middle school, I felt uneasy unless my eyes were hidden behind my bangs.
Hearing that is quite sentimental. It was my teaching that led you to programming.
That's right. You better be prepared, because I'm going to follow you as long as this world keeps turning. Contrary to Emily's and my success, Jessica's company couldn't find competent programmers and gradually spiraled downward. Essentially, Emily's leadership and my technical skills had been the backbone of the company, and without us, it was doomed. And that became reality, as Jessica's company eventually was driven to bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Emily and I steadily grew our team and expanded the company's size. Correspondingly, our relationship also heated up, and now we are inseparable, both at work and in private. The one thing I want to say is that love is a powerful force,